Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. We are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. So let's dive back into the Mesozoic era. For the time of the dinosaurs, from Sci News, Housecaraptor esquili, bizarre new dinosaur, was a mix of aquatic bird and theropod. Basically, a bird is a theropod, regardless of the species. All of them derive from the theropod group, and specifically the group of theropods being Paraves, and which also derive from the Saurischian lineage of dinosaurs, which evolved somewhere around 230 million years ago. So paleontologists have discovered what they say is a completely unexpected semi-aquatic theropod dinosaur that lived 75 million years ago in what is now Mongolia. It seems to be a close relative of a different species over in possibly Canada or Alaska. Hmm. Yeah, it's one of the more, I guess you could say this would be really the equivalent of a duck-billed dinosaur, considering its close resemblance to different species of ducks, at least along the bill part. But it has a very primitive theropod sort of an arm structure, like even comparing it to different species of dromaeosaurs. And yeah, even the sickle claws, that's interesting. You could say it almost has a resemblance to like the small Mongolian dinosaur Shuvia, but Shuvia is quite different. Also having slightly smaller arms compared to its body size. The new dinosaur named Housecaraptor esquili is a strange new anomaly in the dinosaur world. It walked on two legs on land with postural adaptations similar to short-tailed birds like ducks, but used its flipper-like forelimbs to maneuver in water like penguins and other aquatic birds. I don't know. Those seem quite small compared to its body size. I mean, penguins have pretty long limbs. In fact, most aquatic species of birds do. Not this dromaeosaur as much, relying on its long neck for foraging and ambush hunting. Ambush hunting what? Mosquito larvae? I mean, it's possible. Looking at the sickle claws, it might have been going after different species of like smaller reptiles or amphibians because it certainly seems to have the weaponry to go after much larger prey than different species of insects and especially their youngsters. The first time I examined the specimen, I even questioned whether it was a genuine fossil, said Dr. Andrea Cow, a researcher at the Geological and Paleontological Museum Giovanni Capellini in Bologna, Italy. The unexpected mix of traits makes it difficult to place Housecaraptor esquili within traditional classifications. In order to ascertain the integrity of the specimen, it was visualized and reconstructed in 3D using synchrotron multi resolution X ray microtomography. This technique is currently the most powerful and sensitive method to image internal details without damaging invaluable fossils, said Dr. Paul Taforio from the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility, or the ESRF, in Grenoble, France. Okay, so I guess let's bring up another species of dinosaur. So, like specifically the Titan. So Garbatitan.
Okay, well, this is different. Hold on. Okay, don't like this. Does this work?
Um, yeah, he has pretty short forelimbs compared to his overall size. I mean, this might replicate certain species of prosauropod dinosaurs. So the branch of Saurischian dinosaurs that would be the ancestors to this species or the sauropods in general. But also the forelimbs would be much more slender compared to its body size. They would not have the hoof like look of different species of sauropods. They would have had very grasping hands, almost somewhat similar to different species of theropod dinosaurs, which would they were actually closely related to, considering both the prosauropods, the sauropods, and the theropods derived from the Saurischean lineage. This is a better reconstruction of the Titanosaur in this instance. This is about 125 million years ago during the early Cretaceous. So about 17 to 18 million years after the Jurassic ended. So this is after different species of dinosaurs such as Diplodocus, Brachiosaurus, they have already gone extinct. But this is also in a different part of the world, possibly over in northern Africa. And this creature probably reached somewhere around 70 to 85 feet in length, or pushing somewhere around 25 to 27 meters, and probably weighed upwards of 25 to 30 tons.
Somebody gave it a strange face.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad model. I mean, this animal was likely feeding on different species of conifers and might have taken somewhere between 20 to 30 years to grow, yet the sauropods would continue to grow throughout their lives, just at a much slower pace. Considering also when they were younger, it's very probable that similar to different species or different lineages of dinosaurs, such as the hadrosaurs, ceratopsians, which seem to have fed on more high protein species of plants compared to the adults, which would have fed on or certain species of plants that were much higher in fiber. So it's quite a tremendous transition in overall feeding behavior. But these animals were likely very social species, so probably ranging in herds of 20 to 30 individuals. It's a bit of a question as to whether or not they might have been matriarchal, so living in a female led herd society, or maybe somewhat patriarchal, but it's very possible, like in many species of herd animals, that you would have had it where the males might have formed bachelor herds and only have intervened with the females during the ruts or the breeding season. So, likely during some part of the wet season. So no, these were not carnivores, and they did not have the ability to chew their food either. So they simply would have gone up to certain different species of conifers and stripped the leaves and swallowed them whole. Chewing really seems to only be a major contribution to different species of iguanodontids or the ornithopods, which would include the hadrosaurs, slightly with ceratopsians and ankylosauromorphs, but it wasn't very efficient. And I'd say sauropods would have some of the least efficient chewing abilities of any lineage of plant-eating dinosaurs.
I like this one.
Oh, yeah, this is one of those instances where they added a massive amount of muscle to the neck. His legs, though, it is interesting also with these specimens, are quite small. I think the forelimbs or maybe the neck itself would just be smaller. But let's say the neck was this robust, you would need much larger legs to help support all of this weight.
Just to support that neck.
Yeah, I mean, they would be fine if the neck was somewhat structured, like with what you see in the tail, which was also much shorter in this instance. There were many species of titanosaurs, and I believe even certain members of Somphus sauropods that actually had relatively short tails compared to the necks. So this is not too surprising. Though you would have had many species of trees, or at least a wide variety of forests, that would have towered over the tallest sauropods. Even they reared up on their hind legs, with some species reaching well over 40 to 50 feet in the air. Um, Actually, you might have had certain instances if when referring to the longer species of sauropods, like that are pushing 130 feet in length, or maybe somewhere around 40 meters, they could probably reach somewhere between 60 to 70 feet in the air, or pushing over 20 to 25 meters. Our first goal was to demonstrate that this bizarre and unexpected fossil is indeed a genuine animal. Multi resolution scanning confirmed that the skeleton is not a composite assembled from parts of different dinosaurs, added Dr. Dennis Voeten, also from the ESRF. We implemented new methods for the acquisition and optimization of tomographic scan data, which not only confirmed the integrity of the specimen, but also revealed additional paleontological information, said ESRF researcher Dr. Vincent Fernandez. The synchrotron was even able to reveal in astonishing detail those parts of the skeleton that have remained deep within the rock ever since the dinosaur got buried. Our analysis demonstrated that numerous teeth, which are not visible externally, are still preserved inside the mouth, said ESRF scientist Dr. Vincent Beveren. I mean, this isn't. I guess you could say it's surprising for this type of a dromaeosaurid or a member of the Paravest lineage. Also likely a Coelurosaur. So also the group belonging to the group of theropod dinosaurs that would consist of different species of tyrannosaurs, the different species of megaraptorids, and as well as the dromaeosaurs and later different species of modern day birds, microraptorids too. We also identified a neurovascular mesh inside its snout that resembles those of modern crocodiles to a remarkable degree. These aspects suggest that Hauscharaptor esquilli was an aquatic predator. Although the new dinosaur is unique in many ways, certain parts of the skeleton, including the sickle shaped killer claws on its feet, are shared with well known dinosaurs such as Velociraptor. It's definitely much smaller, even when you're comparing it to a Velociraptor. I'd say it's more on the lines with a Troedontid to an extent, but it does seem to have a bit of a longer sickle claw. Well, no, that's very Troedontid like. It's quite short. So this is more along the lines of like Latrevinix, which is a species of Troodontid from Alberta, Canada. Stenonychosaurus, which existed in the region about 72 to 73 million years ago. Okay, well, this was interesting. Let's head over to another part of the Cenozoic era. Mesozoic. So from Sci News, Akainacephalus johnsoni, new armored dinosaur species discovered. A new species of ankylosaurid dinosaur being named Akainacephalus johnsoni has been discovered by paleontologists Jelle, Wiersma, and Randall Irmis from the University of Utah, Natural History Museum of Utah, and James Cook University. The discovery is reported in the journal PeerJ. This is definitely a very good-looking species of ankylosaur. I believe it say it was found over in Utah by chance. No, it just.
This says the museum.
But this would definitely be a good reconstruction of the floodplains of different parts of Montana, possibly Wyoming and Alberta, Canada at this point, even up into Alaska.
Who's this supposed to be?
Yeah, that's a mysterious species of crocodilomorph. I don't know. I'm guessing reaching probably around 12 to 15 feet in length. If this is like a 20 to 30-foot long species of ankylosaur, this is definitely not a member of the nodosaur lineage of ankylosaurimorphs, which at least at the moment we don't have any evidence for containing club tails. And when it comes to the skull structure of ankylosaurs compared to nodosaurs, ankylosaurs tend to have a much more squarish type of a skull, whereas nodosaurs can in a way, but it's more of like a widened triangle and also not as heavily armored. Akainocephalus johnsoni lived approximately 76 million years ago and was 13 to 16 feet or 4 to 5 meters long and 3.5 feet or 1 to 1.5 meters tall at the hips. Okay, this is a pretty short ankylosaur, not entirely surprising. The ankylosaurs were not tall in general. I'd say they were probably for their size the shortest of the dinosaur lineage. And for this time in the Cretaceous, I'd say 16 feet or pushing about 5 meters is very average or typical of different species of Ankylosauridae. Nodosaurs, that's actually quite a large species, or it's on the larger aspect.
Wait a minute. How many nodosaurs are there?
I believe there are around 15 to 25 different species of nodosaurs that have been discovered, not including members of Ankylosauridae. So this species belongs to a group of four-legged herbivorous armored dinosaurs called ankylosaurids, or the family Ankylosauridae, that lived in Asia and western North America during the late Cretaceous epoch. One of the unique features of these creatures is the presence of a characteristic bony tail club. The fossilized partial skeleton of Akainocephalus johnsoni including a complete skull, much of the vertebral column, and complete tail club. Several fore and hind limb elements and bony body armor was recovered from the Caparowitz Formation in Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument in Kane County, southern Utah. Well, interesting. So this is coming from Utah. This isn't coming from over in different parts of late Cretaceous Montana, Alberta, possibly even up into Alaska. This is much further south. So this is really good to hear. Let's bring up another species of dinosaur, the Gryposaurus. So Gryposaurus. So this is taking place over in Montana and Alberta, Canada, around 75 million years ago, possibly also at around the same time that Akainacephalus was roaming different parts of Utah. And this is a species of Saurolophini, so a lineage of hadrosaurs or duck-billed dinosaurs that other species such as Parasaurolophus walleri belong to. Um, So this Saurolophin probably reached some around 30 to 32 feet, or maybe 9 to 9.8 meters.
This look correct?
It's not a bad Gripposaurus sort of a look. I think the youngster in the front is very far off, also because he has a thumb spike. But also overall, just his physique is not Gripposaurus like. He's lost or he time traveled. And Tyrannosaur in the background is pretty accurate. It's likely an Albertosaurus chasing them. Oh yeah, this is a better reconstruction. Also, when looking at the crest or possibly like the bloated region of the skull and like the enhanced neck muscles. I mean, it's very typical for certain lineages of hadrosaurs, especially the Saurolophins. Oh yeah, it's a very complete skull of a Gryposaurus. So this creature had a very efficient chewing ability. It's also showing that typical, like downwards pointed beak when looking at different species of iguanodontids in general. They tend to have this type of a characteristic. It was not feathered, or at least it doesn't seem that we have any evidence for any species of hadrosaur iguanodontid being feathered in general. So it is a bit more closely related to different species of hadrosaurs, such as Parasaurolophus and even Edmontosaurus, compared to creatures such as Corythosaurus and Lambeosaurus, which it likely coexisted with, but they are members of Lambeosaurini, completely different subfamily of hadrosaurs. Seems to be a bit of an older representation, but still not a bad Gryposaurus. I think this is back when it was a bit more of like a gracile sort of a physique given to these hadrosaurs. Well, these two creatures look very stern. I mean, still not a bad characteristic, or it's not a bad reconstruction. They're probably what's supposed to represent, I'm guessing, is a male and a female. So the male having those bloated areas within like the upper maxilla of the skull, and the female just being quite plain, like a slight bit of a crest on top. At least that's my guess. Still very good. Um, just muscle orientation in general. These animals were just feeding on different species of flowers, ferns, probably shorter conifers, and large species of shrubs back in late Cretaceous Alberta. And were probably a favorite food source for species of tyrannosaurs like Albertosaurus, and when they were younger, likely species of raptors or dromaeosaurs, such as Dromaeosaurus itself. Considering dromaeosaurs are not too common at this point in the Cretaceous, at least that we have discovered so far over in North America. Wow, this is a very complete. Well, there have been much more complete specimens of ankylosaurs, and truly nodosaurs have been discovered, but still not bad for an ankylosaur species. The tail, in fact, at least for the core, looking at the caudal vertebrae, is completely intact. Much of the skull structure too. At least the upper part of the jaw. That is astounding. And several bits of the armor, as well as the osteoderms or the little pieces of bone that would have been used as defense. Oh no, is the entire skull intact? That's not I guess
That's what it's showing.
yeah, for maybe due to how robust these skulls were and for different species of nodosaurs and kylosaurs, we tend to find the entire head intact. Unlike many different lineages of dinosaurs, sauropods can be quite challenging to come upon, even certain species of hadrosaurs, but they tend to be quite well preserved when looking at different species of iguanodontids, and even different species of theropods as well. Stegosaurs too. Hmm. Maybe it's just an ornithischian
I was just
trait.
amazed the club was that intact, but the head also.
Um, yeah, well, from the upper view, it didn't seem like a lot, and looking at the side view, that's pretty much completely intact. Most of the leg structures, only a single part of a toe, it seems. It's a little unfortunate, but it's okay. Comparing it to other species of ankylosaurs, which is how this animal was um, identified, so probably comparing it with Euplacephalus, which lived around the same time. Even the later Ankylosaurus, probably even Tarkia from Mongolia. Certain other species from Mongolia and China during the late Cretaceous too. So the unique arrangement of bony armor in the shape of small cones and pyramids covering the snout and head of this dinosaur is the key research finding, indicating that it is closely related to Nodocephalus curtuladensis, an ankylosaur dinosaur that lived about 77 million years ago in what is now New Mexico. So I'm guessing it's about 2 million years before this species would have evolved. We have found different species of ankylosaurs in a wide variety of different parts of the United States, even over in Texas, different parts of Colorado. But surprisingly, Akainacephalus johnsoni and Nodocephalus curtuladensis are more closely related to Asian ankylosaurs, such as Sicania. Yeah, that's one of the genre I was trying to think. In fact, let's bring them up. And Tarkia then to other late Cretaceous North American kylosaurids. Okay, so Saicania, including Hylosaurus and Euoplocephalus. Both the latter species possess flat skull armor.
Okay, I'm trying to find the full picture of this one.
For some reason, I thought this was supposed to represent somebody else. It might be Tarkia that I want to bring up instead. Oh, we could just leave him up too. So I wonder if it's specifically a Sechania. I definitely haven't seen this reconstruction before, where we have found an immense amount of osteoderms or body armor along the forearms of this animal or towards the ulna bone region. So this is quite odd. Like, why specifically did this species of ankylosaur evolve armored towards that part of the body, not place any towards the hind legs? And also even leave the neck quite exposed compared to a wide variety of different species of ankylosaurs.
Why do his
It's
back legs look so weird?
well, also this model is, I mean, I will say at least it's unique, but yeah, they're quite
Okay, I found a
creepy.
pet.
Um, this might be a little too large for Sechania. It could be along the lines of Tarkia a bit more, but I think he also has a bit too short of like an overall body when it comes to the width and should be a little wider, considering Kylosaurs, even Nodosaurs are known for being quite wide. But the rest of him seems okay. I think his beak could be slightly more pointed and a bit extended. He also should not have a fourth claw on his fourth finger on the forefeet. It also makes it look like he's quite armored underneath, and ankylosaurs, at least so far, were devoid of armor, at least on the underbelly, and in some cases, even the chest realm, possibly around the neck or throat. Oh, okay. So, Tarchia. Oh yeah, this is a really good skull specimen of Tarchia. So, oh wait, saying Sechania.
Huh?
That's weird. It's mentioning that this is Sechania, not Tarchia. I still wonder if it might be Tarchia.
Well, it is coming off a wiki, so Wikipedia, so who knows?
Hmm. They are closely related, but there's still major differences. I wouldn't say it looks too different from the other model, but it's you could say, that's a hard one. And the way his legs are spread out, almost looks like a turtle to an extent.
That's the same
Yeah,
one.
I think it might be. It probably is Tarkia. They have a very close resemblance. Yeah, as you can see, like um the teeth in ankylosaurs, you could say, is a bit closer to what the teeth of like different species of ceratopsians could slightly look like. And actually, it's not ceratopsians, it's the earlier stegosaurs that would have contained very similar types of teeth. A little smaller compared to their body size because their overall heads were also much smaller compared to ankylosaurs. In some cases, even the nodosaurs. It doesn't seem that ankylosaurs in general really had the ability to run, maybe moving at top speed
What
of
are
8
we
to
looking at?
11 miles per hour, maybe 13 kilometers. Probably representing China around 70 to
I meant this.
71 million years ago. Oh, I believe it's a Tiziantiasaurus, which has a very short crest compared to its body size. I don't think it's a Saurolophus. Even Tiziantiasaurus would have dwarfed a Tarchia. Tarchia wasn't a necessarily a very large species of ankylosaur. I guess you could say it was mid-size, so pushing somewhere around 6 to 6.8 meters or 20 to 22 feet in length. Probably weighed 1.5 to 2 tons. And I do not know who the lizard is in the background. I think one was smushed, in, like, the bottom foreground. This likely is supposed to represent a nesting colony of, Tisantiasaurus hadrosaurs. So these are also members of the Lambeosaurinae lineage, so more closely related to Corythosaurus and Lambeosaurus compared to Parasaurolophus or Gryposaurus. Or even Tyrannosaurus. You also had Saurolophus that was existing over in China a little earlier in time, like around 80 to 82 million years ago. But Sechania, Tarchia, were most likely not competitors for the Hadrosaurs, and the Hadrosaurs would likely not challenge them for the most part, considering the Tarchia was more than capable of breaking their legs with its club tail or even shattering their skull. The hadrosaurs were not heavily armored, and they did not have the durability to withstand a tail club hit from really any species of ankylosaur. There were also different species of sauropods or long-necked um, saurischians that existed over in Mongolia and China at this point. Certain species that would exist around 71 million years ago, such as Nemectosaurus, roamed the region. And we're talking about sauropods that could reach 80 to 90 feet in length or pushing like around 30 meters. What else? Yeah, I believe Tisantiasaurus is probably around 30 to 33 feet in length, or pushing 9 to 10 meters, maybe weighed around 4 to 5 tons. I believe it might have been Tarkia that had actually a decent sense of smell compared to different species of ankylosaurs. Reasonable hypothesis would be that ankylosaurs from Utah are related to those found elsewhere in Western North America. So we were really surprised to discover that Ankylosaurid johnsoni was so closely related to species from Asia. Really? I mean, I would actually think he would fit in with Tarkia and Cinchania quite well. But I guess when looking at his overall build, this creature does not have a very similar presence to Euoplocephalus, which is very renowned from further north, at least during this part in the Cretaceous, around 75 million years ago in Alberta. But it has very elongated osteoderms along its shoulder blades, towards the side of its rib cage, even towards the back of its hind legs or the pelvis region, which is very unlike this species. It has much more in common with the Asian species of ankylosaurs, which for the most part do not seem to have contained really any spiked armor. And no, there doesn't seem to be any species of ankylosaurs that had any like thagomizers or spikes similar to the earlier stegosaurs. There were certain nodosaurs, actually many of them, that contain stegosaur like defenses, at least when it comes to the very wide thagomizer spikes towards the sides of their tail. Stegosaurs tend to have just very skinny spikes. So ankylosaurs originate in Asia between 125 and 100 million years ago. They do not appear in the North American fossil record until around 77 million years ago. Yeah, they are quite young within North America itself. So there was some major migration that occurred from Asia. This would have also occurred with different species of iguanodontids, likely certain lineages of sauropods, and obviously the tyrannosaurs and dromaeosaurs that finally made it to North America. Akainacephalus johnsoni once roamed the southern part of Laramidia. So this is Laramidia consists of North America, Europe, and Asia. A landmass on the western coast of a shallow sea that flooded the central region, splitting the continent of North America in two. This is referring to the western interior sea that cut North America in half, at least until actually even the end of the age of the dinosaurs still technically contained the western interior sea. But you just had it where 66 million years ago, most of Canada was connected at that point. You just had it where it was the lower 48 or the major um, contiguous United States that was slightly split in two. But back like 75 to 85 million years ago, major part of Canada and the United States was separated. This caused isolation along western and eastern portions of the North American continent during the late Cretaceous epoch between 95 to 70 million years ago. Yeah, it still would extend a bit further in time. The geographic distribution of late Cretaceous ankylosaurids throughout the western interior was the result of several geologically brief intervals of lowered sea level that allowed Asian ankylosaurid dinosaurs to immigrate to North America several times during the late Cretaceous. Um, yeah, that seems to. I mean, it's very likely for wide lineages of dinosaurs as well, not just the ankylosaurids, resulting in the presence of two separate groups of ankylosaurid dinosaurs. This lowering of sea levels exposed the Beringian land bridge, allowing dinosaurs and other animals to move between Asia and North America. I think when some hear the term Bering land bridge, they're usually thinking of different species of ice age or prehistoric animals. Well, mammals from the Pleistocene or the ice age between 11,000 and 2.53 million years ago. So you had different populations of cave lions, woolly mammoths, steppe mammoths, different species of bears and populations of wolves moving back and forth from Asia and North America, even different species of rhinos and camels. So it might have been a somewhat similar thing with different species or lineages of dinosaurs. Okay, let's bring up another species, the Aguaceratops. So Aguaceratops.
AGUJ.
I would say that it's a huge debate when it comes to the horns on top of the eye sockets of this animal and just how large they were. In this instance, it's giving it a bit too much of like a titanoceratops or a triceratops sort of a look. You could even say for how short the frill is. I'm trying to think of another species of ceratopsian that would have had these long of horns. Also, positioned in that straight of a manner, this wouldn't represent a Aguaceratops. Yeah, this is a much better representation. It's just that there are certain depictions of Aguaceratops that depicted as having very short eye socket horns compared to its body size, likely basing it off of certain specimens that have been discovered. But yeah, we do have a skull with decently long arms. I mean, not arms, horns compared to different species of ceratopsians, at least at this time. And also when comparing it like to different members of the Centrosaur lineage, considering a Quadriceratops is a Chasmosaur. So it is more closely related to different species of ceratopsians or ceratopsids, such as Torosaurus, Triceratops, Thyracosaurus. Well, I would say that the
Okay, this gives
nasal
it
horn
shorter horns.
slightly, I mean, where they're very like half the length at most. Um, also, even the frill is quite different compared to many species of the Chasmosaur lineage. It, in a way, could have a bit of like a more centrosaur sort of an appearance, at least in the frill curving forward somewhat. But besides that, it has very Chasmosaur traits. Even the frill horns, so the horns surrounding the upper shield or the part of the skull that would have helped protect the neck are similar to different species of chasmosaurs. Probably when you're looking at different species like a rhinoceratops, or even was it a Kelosaurus? But a Kelosaurus might be a centrosaur. But focusing on Aguaceratops, so this animal is from different parts of the United States, such as Texas, from around 74 to 75 million years ago, and likely came into contact with more southern populations of Gorgosaurus tyrannosaurs at the time, and also coexisting with the different species of Pentaceratops, like such as Pentaceratops sternbergi from New Mexico, and which was also named after the paleontologist Charles Sternberg himself.
There's somebody made a model. Is that better?
Um, I mean, it's not a bad model, but I would say it might be a little too short when it comes to like his core. It should be a bit lower to the ground compared to his tail. Now, his tail is a bit of a harder um, area to criticize, considering there are different species of ceratopsians that had quite slender tails. Even Triceratops, to an extent, didn't exactly have a very thick tail. There are certain representations showing Triceratops with thicker tails.
I think somebody said the name and AI thought they'd put it in water.
Yeah, this looks a bit closer to, I'd say, a Titanoceratops. Now, many species of ceratopsians did inhabit the swamps or in the marshes. So, in terms of a behavioral stance, this is actually pretty accurate. There were certain species of ceratopsians that probably thrived in a much drier region and just not inhabiting the swamps. Many species of ceratopsians also have quite wide feet. So, also helping indicate, kind of like with hippos, it would help splay their weight out somewhat. Let's see what else is going on here. A shorter nasal horn also compared to different species of ceratopsians, but it's wider in many cases. Not necessarily compared to Triceratops, but likely when you're looking at different species of the Pentaceratops, and probably along the lines of Titanoceratops, however. But the horns would be shaped slightly different. The frill horns are too Triceratops like. Though seeing that the forelimbs or the forelegs are much shorter compared to the hind limbs is a very Chasmosaur trait in general, and is likely the case with the Aguaceratops. So this animal was probably pushing about 22 to 26 feet in length, or maybe some around 6.8 to over 8 meters. and probably weighed in at 2 to 2.5 tons. Also, likely being a very social creature, so living in small herds. I think the skull of this model is okay for an Ceratops. I mean, also has that distinct side horn, which was likely present. Seems to be the case with many species of ceratopsians. They gave it a very thin nasal horn, however. Looking at the skull, you could say there is somewhat of a tall, sort of a nasal horn look. It seems quite blunt compared to certain other ceratopsians, but just might be a bit skinny. This isn't bad. I would say his feet, however, the hairs, they're giving them like webbed feet. That's interesting. I mean, yeah, I guess you could say it's a theory because, or it's an interesting theory due to the fact these animals inhabit the swamps, so they might have been slightly webbed, but this is almost like an otter. Certain otter species in some instances. So that's definitely a funny, similar mutation. He's not bad. They added feathers along the tail and the upper part of the back or along the pelvis region. It's very likely for different species. Yeah, it's not as sharp of a nasal horn, but besides that, I mean, the frill doesn't seem to be there. It's not a bad representation. Yeah, this is pretty good. It almost has like a Chasmosaurus sort of a look to it. Chasmosaurus, though, had much shorter horns. Also, the horns curving upwards, like towards the sky, but also its frill. Very common occurrence in certain species of Chasmosaurus. Yeah, and he's just got issues. I mean, at least he's in the swamp. So such is exactly the case with okay, back to the ankylosaurid. Such is exactly the case with Akainacephalus johnsoni. Not only is this the first described and named late Cretaceous ankylosaurid dinosaur from Utah, but this unique animal also strengthens the evidence that distinct northern and southern provincialism existed during the late Campanian stage in Laramidia, because to date, we don't see this type of ankylosaurid dinosaurs in the fossil record of northern Laramidia. Um, yeah, actually, we do. Maybe I'm pretty sure this was what 75 million years ago. No, didn't say there. Okay, 76 million years ago. No, they're showing up. I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't say this is unheard of. Okay, so from our observations, we can conclude that at least two immigration events, migratory events, there comes to a point where you just use the word that's more associated with the quadruped animals, or even if you're talking about bipedal theropod dinosaurs, took place during late Cretaceous times when lowered sea levels exposed the Beringian land bridge connecting Asia with Western North America. Okay, well, this was definitely a good-looking species of ankylosaur has been discovered over in Utah. I will say it's not common to find them over in Utah itself, but as you head further north, it's they're much more abundant. Okay, let's head to another part of the Mesozoic era or the time of the dinosaurs. So from Sinus, footprints of megatheropod dinosaur found in Lesotho. So we're over in southern South Africa. Well, no, southern. Yeah, I was thinking of the continent and the country itself. It's within the country of South Africa. Footprints of a previously unknown, very large carnivorous dinosaur have been found on an ancient land surface known as a paleosurface in the Maseru district of Lesotho, Africa. Let's see what's going on here. Whoa. Yeah, these are these are definitely not small footprints. I mean, yeah, comparing it to your foot, but very I'd say thin and or short in overall width when it comes to the toes.
They cut the other foot off.
Oh yeah, that's annoying. So I really wonder who is making this. I don't think it's an Abeli. Definitely not a Tyrannosaur. There isn't any evidence for Tyrannosaurs existing in Africa, not even over in northern Africa, where recently we have found a species of Hadrosaur in the region, a species of Ceratopsian. Not entirely sure about ankylosaurs or nodosaurs, but definitely not tyrannosaurs. There were later species of allosaurs or allosauroideae, not Allosaurus itself. Well, okay, that's I might need to be careful with that. We're looking at the late Jurassic, but just it almost looks like something similar to an not ornithopod, a ornithomimid look. So creatures such as Gallimimus, Ornithomimus, Struthiomimus, maybe some type of Coelurosaur or a relative of the Therizinosaurs. That is a big question because they're also quite large for this type of a build. Okay, let's see what else is going on. Newly discovered three-toed footprints named Kyanthopus umbrocoholi are 22 inches or 57 centimeters long and 20 inches or 50 centimeters wide. I'm guessing it's referring to the palm. Yeah, those toes aren't that wide. They belong to a megatheropod or giant two-legged carnivorous dinosaurs such as the iconic Tyrannosaurus rex. Okay, if let's say we were over in North America or some part of Asia, you could even say Europe if you're back in the Jurassic. But you're looking at different species of tyrannosaurs, especially members of Proceratosauridae. Yeah, you could have a footprint that looks somewhat similar to that sort of a build, but it's going to be much smaller. I mean, many earlier species of tyrannosaurs were not much more than 8 feet in length or pushing around 2.3 meters. So yeah, definitely not something closely related to T-Rex. It might be in the Coelurosaur lineage of theropods that T-Rex belongs to, but it's definitely not Tyrannosaur. That lived 200 million years ago in southern Africa. Okay, now we're at the very first 2 million years of the Jurassic. So it's some immense species of neotheropod. So more closely related to Dilophosaurus, Krylophosaurus, Saltriovenator, Dracovenator. We might bring up a couple of those species. University of Manchester paleontologist Fabian Knoll and co-authors estimate that the dinosaur was a little less than 10 feet or 3 meters tall. 10 feet tall. And also at this time, that is immense. Though we did have large species of neotheropods already existing during the Triassic, at least for the time, such as the Lelian sternus, but it wasn't necessarily 10 feet in height. It might have been pushing somewhere around 8 feet or like 2.4, 2.6 meters and 30 feet or 9 meters long. This is huge for this is, wow, which is smaller than T Rex. Well, okay. It doesn't have to always be compared with um, T Rex himself. I mean, it could have been compared with like Megalosaurus or who maybe even Deltadromeus. Trying to think of like other like some better species. I mean, maybe Torvosaurus. So this discovery is very exciting and sheds new light on the kind of carnivore that roamed what is now southern Africa. Okay, let's bring up another Triassic species of theropod dinosaur. But um, wow, 30 feet. Everything about this. Okay, Dracovenator. Dracovenator. You could have compared it with like Dilophosaurus, but Dilophosaurus is like 20 feet in length or 6 meters. So this is one of the oldest. Well, um, it's like the beginning of a new lineage of neotheropod dinosaurs. But Dracovenator was somewhere around 12 to 15 feet in length. They're pushing somewhere between like 3.5 to maybe 4.6 meters and probably weighed upwards of like 1,000 pounds or pushing a little over 450 kilograms. And the animals that it's hunting in this vicinity are members of the heterodontosaur lineage of ornithischian dinosaurs. In fact, some of the first to evolve of the ornithischian lineage itself, considering ornithischians, at least so far, do not seem to have evolved during the Triassic and first popped up around 200 to 201 million years ago during the beginning of the Jurassic period. And despite their overall build, especially when looking at their skulls, because they have those distinct canines, these were not carnivores. Further analysis on their tooth structure indicates that these animals were likely just feeding on different species of vegetation, especially ferns during the time. Flowers have not yet evolved. Oh yeah. I guess that's an okay reconstruction of a Dracovenator. And he seems maybe a little small, possibly a bit stocky in this instance, considering he would have had a bit of a more elongated sort of a build. His arms seem okay. Now, what is also interesting is that they added feathers to most of the body of this creature. There were a wide variety of different species of theropod dinosaurs during the early Jurassic and the Triassic that would have likely contained feathers. We just don't have a lot of evidence for these animals having them. But it's very possible. Despite its resemblance to Dilophosaurus, it's actually quite different and also very distantly related. Yeah, it does share a lot. When even looking at the jaw structure, is that bit of
Was
a
it
curve?
wasn't Dilophosaurus larger?
Well, much larger. Dilophosaurus could probably reach around 2,000 pounds or pushing over 950 kilograms. Dracovenator was smaller. But when looking at like where the nostril is placed, even the eye sockets, the slight difference. Actually, I think it's a major difference in how the jaw is overall structured. Dilophosaurus has a major curve in the upper part of the front snout when compared to this creature. I think it's a decent model. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. The crest, I think it's a bit debated as to how specifically tall it would have projected, but even with Dilophosaurus, that technically is the same case. But Dilophosaurus would have had a much larger crest, probably also a bit more durable in general, but it probably wasn't used for engaging in fights. Dracovenator seems to have had a slightly shorter crest compared to its body size. Also, Dracovenator seems to have evolved much earlier than compared to Dilophosaurus. Dilophosaurus was existing over in Arizona around 192 million years ago. Also, at this point in the Jurassic, most of the continents were still connected to each other. So Pangea was pretty much all Pangea was mostly accessible to all dinosaurs. That's why you have instances in the late Triassic and the early Jurassic, different species of dinosaurs not just being found in different parts of the Arctic, but over in the Antarctic as well. And it could reach certain cool temperatures at different points. So you would have had um, the four seasons as well in these different areas. That's not a yeah. I mean, it's an okay reconstruction.
Okay, I
Think
know
that's
I've
somebody's
pulled
art.
this up before, but this is funny.
Oh, yeah, he came up. I think it might have popped up for Corythoraptor. So that very basically the species of oviraptor that contains the largest crest compared to its body size. It's quite tall too, similar to a cassowary. I'm just wondering why he brought it or why he popped up with the other images, considering usually if it's a random dinosaur that happens to appear with other species, it's that Megalosaurus.
Oh no, he did. Okay. What?
This might that's Dracoraptor,
Oh,
not
I didn't read it.
Dracovenator. So this is a I think a later species of theropod dinosaur. Yeah, much later. It's a bit more of like a Osteoraptorid or um gosh, who maybe a troodontid sort of a look. So this animal is likely feeding on early ornithischians, prosauropods. later species of prosauropods, and probably even other theropod dinosaurs at certain points. Maybe even the earliest theropharians, so relatives of the earlier ancestors to the stegosaurs and the ankylosauromorphs. Yeah, some has dark pterosaur in the background. So that's because so back to the article and these mysterious footprints of a large Jurassic predator. Early Jurassic. That's because it is the first evidence of an extremely large meat eating animal roaming a landscape otherwise dominated by a variety of herbivorous, omnivorous, and much smaller carnivorous dinosaurs. It really would have been top of the food chain. For anywhere at this point in time, it's going to be at the top of the food chain for the theropod lineage. This is a huge carnivore. What makes the discovery even more important is that these footprints date back to the early Jurassic epoch, when it was thought the size of most theropod dinosaurs was considerably smaller. Now, we've had evidence for a few decades now that there were certain larger predators like Saltravinator, Dracovinator that were making more of a presence during this time. But it's when you're reaching these numbers that it becomes quite shocking. On average, they were previously thought to be around 10 to 16 feet in 10 to 16 feet in length or 3 to 5 meters. I mean, yeah, it sounds about right. With some records showing that they may have reached 23 feet or 7 meters at the very most. Yeah, possibly a salt trivinator could have reached that size. And then definitely later species, such as Cryolophosaurus and Dilophosaurus being within the 20 to 23 foot range or 6 to 7 meters. It is only much later in the Jurassic and during the Cretaceous, which starts 145 million years ago, that truly large forms of theropods such as T. rex appear in body and trace fossil records. Why is this being compared with T. rex? This there are so many different species of theropod dinosaurs that this could be compared with, especially from the early Cretaceous. You could easily leave all the late Cretaceous species out. Different smaller species of Carcharodontosaurs, other members of Allosauridae itself, different species of Megalosaurs, also from the mid to late Jurassic. I mean, you could put Streptospondylus from mid Jurassic England in here. Streptospondylus. Gosh, who else? I mean, I'm also trying to think of different species from Africa. You could even go over to the Coelurosaur lineage and stick in different species of Megaraptor. It's like Australopithecus from Australia, and instead, it's just sticking with T Rex.
Maybe so it gets
T
internet hits.
Yeah, T Rex is one of like 3 to 400 different species of theropod dinosaurs that have been discovered. And yeah, you could say a number of those are under, well, a large portion under 30 feet in length, but you could stick still between the 20 to 30 foot realm, and you still have easily over 150 different species. Let's keep going. This discovery marks the first occurrence of very large carnivorous dinosaurs in the early Jurassic of southern Gondwana, said Dr. Lara Shishko, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Cape Town. This makes it a significant find. Globally, these large tracks are very rare. There is only one other known site similar in age and size tracks, which is in Poland. Huh. I wonder what it's referring to in that instance. Did have different large species of prosauropods, proto-mammals, like the members of Stachyrodidae, that existed over in Poland. But large carnivorous dinosaurs, that seems to be a lot rarer. They're almost non-existent, especially pushing the size of whatever this behemoth was. Okay, let's actually bring up a sauropod dinosaur, the Volcanodon. So Vulcanodon. Not again. This is supposed to be from the mid Jurassic. You could say late early Jurassic, like around 178 to 180 million years ago. But this sauropod has a lot of issues. First of all, he would not be inhabiting a volcanic area. There's too little vegetation in the region. Yes, they would occasionally munch on different species of cycads, which is what the plants are in the picture. But the overall um, length of the neck, even the arms, it's all very far off. The head is also far too long compared to its body size.
Wait a minute, another weird one.
It looks more prosauropod like. What? He's even got a giant horn or two on
Is
the
a
top of his
dragon?
skull. Yeah, and he has a beak. There isn't a single species of sauropod that we have discovered that has a beak. All of them have lips. And okay, yes, sauropods had hooves. They were just far too short. Had a genetic issue. Okay, this is much more volcanodon like. So, about 178 million years ago during the Jurassic, you had some of the first sauropods come to light. So around like 180 million years ago is when you had some of the first species of true sauropods evolve, and the prosauropods, their ancestors, have now gone extinct. Also, many of the species of earlier neotheropods that would have hunted those prosauropods, since they don't any longer really have the capabilities to take on these much larger species. They were used to feeding on animals that, in many cases, were smaller than them or maybe slightly larger. But when we're looking at Volcanodon, we're looking at a creature, it's probably pushing around 50 feet in length or pushing a little over maybe 15 meters.
He doesn't look that big either.
Yeah, and probably weighed somewhere around 12 to 15 tons. So immense compared to most species of prosauropods. Don't know if we have evidence of any species of prosauropods that could reach that size. Definitely not that length. 35, 40 feet, like a 12-meter long prosauropod for sure over in South America. But it only maybe reached somewhere around 8 tons. And also the prosauropods in general were just much more lightly built. You're also in many cases taking away massive leg size from the animals, so a bit more built like a theropod. And overall, even their necks, like compared to different species of diplodocids, were much more lightly built and shorter. But Volcanodon was a very advanced species of dinosaur for its time.
Okay, what's with the face on this one?
Even the hooves looks like something from an animated movie. Yeah, he looks like a bit. You know what? He doesn't even look like a dragon. He looks like the Never-Ending Story dog. But um, yeah, I guess the legs are much more in proportion compared to the other depiction. I guess a couple of pictures back. But besides that, yeah, we don't have a skull of any species of sauropod that would have looked like the face in this instance, or even really having any horn-like structures. That's what's interesting also about the sauropod lineage is that they didn't really have any horns. They might have had osteoderms linking along the neck, back vertebrae, along their tail, but not really anything that you see on like the horned dinosaurs being the ceratopsians. Even certain many theropod dinosaurs had horn-like structures. Who else? The stegosaurs or ankylosaurs. This is definitely something from what the you could go as far back as like the 1930s, maybe even further. But if this is supposed to be Volcanodon, wow, it's definitely back when they're giving it very stockish, um, like forelimbs and hind limbs.
Oh wait, I have a weird one.
What looks like somebody took like a not a frilled dragon. Keep forgetting those lazy lizards, but uh, maybe even what a horned lizard from Arizona,
Why does it
and
look
it's
like there's the entire thing is
like they gave it Archosaur power to an extent,
it looks like it came off of what's that game?
like a pixel sort of a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Well, not really like a dinosaur. You know, actually, It almost looks like a bit of a representation of earlier depictions of iguanodon back in the 1820s and the 1830s. So by paleontologists such as Richard Owen, William Buckland, and it's back when iguanodon was like a very stocky reptile with its thumb spike as the horn, or they placed it on its snout. So thinking that it was used for defense, similar to a rhino, or later what would be discovered as a different species of ceratopsians.
I can't get past that.
Yeah, I think he's funny. He's like a shorter
He looks like a
sauropod.
dragon head.
Well, that too. I just meant his short little legs.
Oh,
It's like a, um, yeah, I've
give
seen.
him some wings and put him in How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah, that would definitely work. Yeah. Oh, okay. I was trying to remember for a second. I thought maybe we didn't see any more accurate Volcanodon looks. Oh, finished? No. Okay, so the ancient surface where these footprints were found is also covered with the tracks of much smaller theropod dinosaurs. In South Africa, Lesotho, Zimbabwe, and Namibia, there's good record of theropod footprints from the late Triassic and early Jurassic epochs. That is interesting. So basically throughout southern Africa, you have a wide variety of different footprints, also not just showing theropods, but even prosauropods in the region, possibly even different species of crocodilomorphs or the Rausuchians that used to inhabit the area. That would be really late Triassic. There were still crocodilomorphs into the Jurassic throughout the Mesozoic in general, but not the terrestrial Rausuchians. They went extinct about 202 million years ago. So, in fact, there are numerous paleo surfaces where footprints and even tail and body impressions of these and other animals can be found. But now we have evidence this region of Africa was also home to mega carnivores. So it is a mystery as to what on earth or what in the Jurassic this could be. Um, yeah, I'll definitely take a further look into this. Okay, let's head to another part of the Mesozoic era, or the time of the dinosaurs. So from Sci News, newborn ichthyosaur reveals its last meal. Well, geesh, sounds sudden. A team of paleontologists in the UK has identified the smallest and youngest specimen of the ichthyosaur, Ichthyosaurus communis, on record, and found the remains of a prehistoric squid within its stomach. If you're referring to a single ichthyosaur pup by itself, this could possibly be correct. Um, by it being the smallest and youngest specimen, but we have a wide variety of different female ichthyosaur specimens, like from a wide variety of different species throughout the Jurassic period. So between like 201 and 143 million years ago, with several pups inside the rib cage when they died. So finding ichthyosaur pups, at least all together, is not necessarily too surprising. It's still always a good find. But if this is saying that it was alone, then that's quite rare. Yeah, yeah, squid would be a very um, common food source. The ichthyosaur fossil has a total length of just 27.5 inches or 70 centimeters. That actually seems kind of large. And is approximately 199 to 196 million years old. Yeah, so towards the very beginning of the Jurassic. University of Manchester paleontologist Dean Lomax and colleagues identified it as a newborn Ichthyosaurus communis based on the arrangement of bones in the skull. Yeah, I mean, they were definitely also comparing it to different species of ichthyosaurs during the first 10 million years of the Jurassic. Well, probably the first 12 million years. This is not, however, the first time the ichthyosaurs have evolved, considering you had different species like the Shastosaurus, Shonisaurus, the Symbospondylus existing further back into the Triassic period. So it is amazing to think we know that, or know what a creature that is nearly 200 million years old ate for its last meal. We found many tiny hook like structures preserved between the ribs. These are from the arms of prehistoric squid. So we know this animal's last meal before it died was squid. It is not too entirely surprising to hear that ichthyosaurs were munching on calamari, It would have been very similar for different species of plesiosaurs or the long-necked marine reptiles that once the Jurassic hit, they would have coexisted with. Most plesiosaurs were not really a threat, but at this point, in fact, slightly later, especially between like 185 and 190 million years ago, you had a few species of plesiosaurs that likely preyed on ichthyosaurs. They had very large heads compared to their body size. Most plesiosaurs are just going to be feeding on different species of ammonites, maybe smaller fish or squid in this instance. Probably not even going after ichthyosaur pups. This is interesting because a study by other researchers on a different type of ichthyosaur called Stenopterygis, which is from a geologically younger age, it's much younger, found that the small and therefore young examples of that species fed exclusively on fish. This shows a difference in prey preference in newborn ichthyosaurs. Actually, that wasn't hitting me. That maybe the young were explicitly feeding on squid. I still find that a bit hard to grasp considering many species of larger carnivores, marine carnivores today love squid, like full grown sea lions, different species of whales. Squid is definitely a favorite. I mean, it's certainly possible. Maybe something different about the nutrition of squids at that point, because we have entirely different species of squid today compared to the early Jurassic. Now, while that might not sound too surprising, they are very far off in the family tree. In fact, it doesn't seem to be where like modern day squids really evolved until maybe the Cretaceous, so pushing like 140 million years ago. Okay, let's see. So we're looking at this species of Ichthyosaurus. Let's bring up maybe Ophthalmosaurus itself. Oh no! A much larger creature, Leedosichthys. So Leed Ischthys.
This looks like a fish.
Yep, that's because it is. It's just immense. Yeah, usually when people think of large species of fish, they might be assuming like today's basking or whale sharks or the previous Otodus megalodon. But there was a fish that possibly could approach the size of at least no, I think it was much larger than the whale shark. It's probably approaching certain Otodus species of fish very similar to megalodon. However, it was probably feeding on much smaller organisms and not going after different species of long-necked plesiosaur marine reptiles or the different species of long-skulled pliosaurs within the region. So this was around 160 million years ago during the mid-Jurassic, and this fish could probably reach somewhere around maybe 60 to 75 feet in length. It's possible that it could have reached even larger sizes or pushing probably around 22 to 25 meters and probably weighed in at maybe 40 to 50 tons. It was an immense species of fish. So probably approaching the size of megalodon itself, but it did not have the large teeth, of course, that megalodon would have consisted of. However, there are different species of sharks like the whale shark and the frilled shark or basking shark that don't really have large teeth.
Okay, I have a strange one.
So it was likely just feeding on different plankton. Oh no, what on earth? Are those like underwater ticks or
Yeah, they're
snails?
parasites.
Yeah. I mean, it's very likely that there might have been different parasites. Whoa. Okay. That lead Leedosichthys, even the other species of fish, marine reptiles at the time might have had to be wary of. But yeah, I don't think these existed. I'm not sure what that's supposed to replicate. It almost looks like certain species from like the what was it, Silurian or Ordovician period. So between maybe 400 40 to 510 million years ago,
This one's interesting.
and probably even the Cambrian too. Yeah, he didn't have these types of teeth. Now, it is showing baleen teeth. I mean, that certainly is possible, but it's a very odd reconstruction. And it's also showing ichthyosaurs. I think that's an ichthyosaur, but it could be a pliosaur. Yeah, it might be a pliosaur with just an overly long tail towards the front of his mouth. It's also depicting him feeding on smaller fish. It certainly is possible. But it's probably also feeding on krill at this point.
Oh, this is a I like this.
I think many also tend to depict just like whale sharks or whales in general feeding on krill. A wide variety of different types of animals would and do feed on krill. Now, unless it's a different species, I might have overestimated the size, but that's still pushing like around 30 tons. Though it still was probably hunted by different species of the long skull pliosaurs at the time. So, like earlier predecessors to Predator X, which was a species of pliosaur that inhabited the oceans surrounding the islands of Germany, Switzerland, England during the late Jurassic around 150 million years ago.
The only thing based on a fossil I could find is this.
Oh, yeah, there's his tail. Yeah, it's pretty much, I think, the only specimen that we have, or one of the few specimens of Ledesichthys.
Well, then
It's
how do
very
we
well preserved, at least for the dorsal fins.
how do we know what his mouth looked like?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Have we found certain fragments of his skull, at least?
Well, we know the museums hide everything.
Yeah, for some reason they will stick them in just random shelves and leave them or just isolated for decades, sometimes over a century. So I
No,
really
there's
do.
more stuff now.
Oh, did you find something?
No, this is where I say that they hide stuff.
Oh, okay. So these are more specimens. Caturus. I wonder if that's another. Oh, yeah, it's saying Ledesichthys. Peterborough, guessing the paleontologist that discovered him or described him. So might have named him too. Or only named him and didn't necessarily find the fossils. Okay, so we have more coming up. I'm guessing these might have been part of the ribs or the fins in general. Maybe even the tail. So the caudal vertebrae. I don't think it's caudal vertebrae. Look more like limbs. Also wonder how large they are considering yeah, probably not small. I mean, I think it's a large paintbrush. Seems to have been broken. Not sure if another like fish in general, like another Ledesichthys, another pliosaur attacked it. That's why it's broken. Hmm. Wonder if that's part of the fin. Oh, that's part of the skull. There we go. Wow. If that is Ledesichthys, that's giving him quite a thin tail. I wonder if this is somebody else, maybe a close relative. Definitely a lot more intact. And the whole fin seems to be in place.
Says the same thing on it, but
Yeah, it could be.
hold on, let me do
The D bone is part of the center of the tail fin. Now, let me know what you find extremely odd about this fish or even the different species or lineages of marine reptiles from the Jurassic. It is quite odd that they went extinct towards the.
Oh, wait a minute. This says Bonarectes?
I'm not familiar with that fish genus. think it's a genus. Whoa. Definitely a massive increase. Maybe it's a larger species compared to Ledosichthys, also giving him an immense gill. Kind of reminds me of that.
16 feet.
Oh, what is that supposed to be? A
Hold
miniature?
on. It grew. Oh, it grew at least 5 meters in total body length, substantially less than Ledosichthys.
Yeah, it's
So
like
he's little.
16 to 17 feet. So what's with? Okay, I guess the ichthyosaur is supposed to be far in the distance. You could attack one of these animals. It wouldn't be preferable. Yeah, it's kind of a risk to his snout. Okay, let's head back to the article. So the new specimen of Ichthyosaurus communis from the is from the collections of the Lapworth Museum of Geology, University of Birmingham. There are several small ichthyosaur specimens known, but most are incomplete or poorly preserved. The specimen is practically complete and is exceptional. It is the first newborn Ichthyosaurus communis to be found, which is surprising considering that the species was first described almost 200 years ago. Was like Richard Owen or William Buckland also on this? There were other English paleontologists at the time. Um,
Wait a minute.
I'll bring up
They were
later.
around 200 years ago?
Well, I mean, I was pushing like 18, also tens at that point, but definitely 1820s. So, yeah, and we had found different species of ichthyosaurs at that point. He also had Mary Anning making different discoveries on different species of marine reptiles, including ichthyosaurs. Interesting. Wow. First newborn of this specific species. I find that quite surprising. I think also because of how far back it's been known. Okay, let's head forward into the Cenozoic. This was really good to see. So, from news.mongabay.com, Nepal's rhino translocation looks good in numbers, but not so much in habitat. Well, let's see what's going on here. Seems to be a bit back and forth with the greater one horn rhino situation over in northern India and Nepal, which is one of the few areas where the greater one horn rhino is native to within Asia. A new study suggests that, um, yeah, it's pretty obvious. It's just talking about habitat degradation. Okay, so Kathmandu, Nepal's ambitious efforts to establish a viable population of the vulnerable greater one horned rhinoceros in western Nepal's Bardaya National Park 40 years ago has been seen as a conservation success. The park, which didn't have a surviving population until the 1980s, is now home to 38 individuals, as per recent census. But a new study shows that the translocated animals are wandering far outside their release zones in search of food and water, suggesting the habitat may not be healthy enough to keep them there. I mean, that is very likely, but you can also have it where, I mean, depending on how small the park is, I don't know the size of Bardaya National Park, but the animals, especially the larger species, can just leave. But you can also have smaller species of birds making large migratory routes or even smaller mammals. Researchers who GPS colored five of the eight animals translocated from Chitwan in central Nepal in 2016 to 17 found that the larger home range of the reintroduced rhinos, Rhinoceros unicornis, in Babai Valley, one of the two habitats, the other one being the banks of Karnali River of Bardaya National Park, was primarily due to limited grassland, fragmented riverine forests, and seasonal scarcity of water and forage. Habitat degradation from floods further reduce suitability, forcing rhinos to range widely. Given the small population size and fragmented habitat, Babai Valley may not support a viable rhino population without significant habitat restoration, addition of individuals, or relocation to more suitable sites. It sounds like the park wasn't healthy to start with. Why would you reintroduce um, larger animals that need like very specific grasses because they thrive in a floodland grassland zone. But also, just why would you reintroduce them in an area where it's unhealthy? Well, it seems like a healthy mother with her calf.
She looks like she's frowning.
Yeah, greater one horn rhinos, I guess, compared to all the other rhinos, didn't have that type of a look for some reason. Also, they do not have like armor along different parts of their bodies, considering it used to be theorized that that's what they had. Considering when you look at it, you might confuse it for like different types of or similar mutations to nodosaur or even ankylosaur armor. But in reality, it just seems to be folds in their skin that would have helped or do help regulate temperature, so keeping the animal a bit cool. It is quite astounding as to, like, since the late 1800s, like the, 1870s, the 1880s, into the early 1900s, that there were different naturalists, zoologists coming in over from Germany, the Netherlands, England, I believe even the United States, that did a wide range of different discoveries and behavioral studies on greater one-horned rhinos. So once confirmed, that's also when these national parks, were assigned as well. So once confined to Chitwan National Park, the heartland of Nepal's rhino population, a smaller number of animals were relocated to Bardaya and Shakla Fanta National Parks in the late 1980s to expand their range. But heavy poaching and weak security during the decade long Maoist insurgency, which started in 1996, took a devastating toll. Nepal's rhino population almost had from 612 in 2000 to 375 in 2005. Ouch. Considering this is an animal that takes quite a while to reproduce, that is not good. While Bardia's numbers fell from 67 to 22 by 2008, prompting authorities to relocate another 9 rhinos in the latter decade to revive their population. The latest 2021 census shows the park is now home to 38 rhinos, with, well, I mean, that's an increase. Shows how slowly they reproduce. But it's almost like with the numbats in Australia. You hear these small increases in numbers of the little, like foot long or 30 centimeter marsupial that preys on like different ants and termite species with a 6.5 inch long tongue, or I think pushing around maybe, um, 10 to 12 centimeters. And I think, yeah, in certain areas, there's only like less than 50 of them. Let's see. Okay, with Nepal's national population reaching 752, a 16.6 increase compared to 2015. Well, that was in 2021, so maybe they've increased a bit more. Well, I guess it's okay. Still needs more. Despite the gains, however, researchers say that the habitat use and distribution of translocated rhinos remain poorly understood. Of course, they are. But they add the use of GPS tracking in the recent study to track the rhinos hourly for about a year has provided more detailed insights than the very high frequency collars previously used to monitor relocated animals. Huh. Yeah, I guess that can make sense. Maybe they were constantly destroying them. Babu Ram Lemishhan, co-author of the study, who currently associated with the nonprofit Wildcare Nepal.
Wait, wait, wait. Who is Babu?
It's what Sally calls Linus in Peanuts.
Oh, okay.
Said their study demonstrates that floodings, particularly in 2015 and 2017, have inundated large areas of the Babai Valley. He said this has reduced grassland patches and limited wallowing sites, which the rhinos prefer. Huh.
The way you said that cracked me up.
No, I just find that surprising considering greater one horn rhinos need flooding to occur. But maybe it was like a bit of a flash flood sort of an instance and it had devastating impacts on the soils and the plants in the area. Seems to be the case. I mean, they haven't explicitly said that. Which okay, so within the narrow valley, causing the animals to roam beyond their normal range. We are seeing the impacts of water deficit in the Babai River, especially during the dry season. Well, yeah, it's a dry season in the life cycle of rhinos. Shani said they're gradually shifting their habitat for wallowing and securing food sources, as far as moving to India's Katarnia Ghat Wildlife Sanctuary, where it's flatter and which has more water availability. The rhino habitat is not an optimal level in Babai Valley. Yeah, it sounds like it's just unhealthy. Oh, well, here's I guess conservationists or tourists, and they're just surrounding they're just watching a herd of rhinos. Usually the males that they try to avoid. I mean, sometimes the females can be aggressive too, but it's the males, especially during the rut, will charge the elephants, even if there's a
Why are there no horns on them?
small group. No, they are. Um, they greater one horn rhinos just have much shorter horns compared to the white rhinos or black rhinos over in Africa. And the Sumatran Javan rhinos have even shorter horns. So you can have greater one horn rhinos have a horn length of like a foot or maybe 30 centimeters. But it doesn't usually reach any higher or longer. I guess they have their calves. So it's all in Chitwan National Park. So, water is a critical resource for rhinos, not only for drinking, but also for thermoregulation, skin maintenance through wallowing, with prolonged dry periods potentially increasing ecological stress by reducing access to water, forage, and wallowing sites. This could potentially force rhinos to travel longer distances and spend more energy. According to Bahram Wasthai, a rhino researcher who holds a doctorate from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, Shishwangbana Tropical Botanical Garden, where he studied the ecosystem functions of rhinos in Nepal, which was probably obtained from the studies of different zoologists and naturalists from the early 1900s and late 1800s. He said that while Chitwan provides extensive alluvial floodplains with large contiguous grasslands, abundant wetlands, and relatively stable riverine forests, which in turn provides high quality forage and water year round for the rhinos, Bay Valley, in contrast, has narrower floodplains, more fragmented grassland patches, and greater seasonal variation in water forage availability. So it sounds like but the Babai Valley just is a completely different ecosystem in general, and it's not obtaining the water sources like over in Chitwan. That can explain a lot more. These differences influence rhino ecology, and these habitat differences directly affect rhino behavior. Badari has potential, but it's still uncertain whether Babai currently has enough high quality grassland and dry season resources to support a much larger self sustaining rhino population. So the transfer. Oh, wait. Relocation. Wait a second. Did I? Okay. Relocations are a common conservation tool to revive populations of vulnerable and endangered species, though Nepal has had mixed results with that practice. The translocation of rhinos from Chitwan to other locations has been largely successful, at least population wise, though there have been concerns. The transfer of wild water buffaloes, Bubalis arni, from Koshi Tapu Wildlife Reserve in eastern Nepal to Chitwan National Park in 2017 faced setbacks, with the entire introduced population eventually dying. Ouch, considering wild water buffalo are not common over in um, South Asia or Southeast Asia in general. So that is not good to hear. However, I would like to intervene and make a um, guess what? A commemoration to the French naturalist Georges Cuvier, who back in August of, I believe, 1794, put out a paper and I think a speech stating as to why the elephant and the mammoth are completely different species. Now let's continue. So, more recently, a proposed black buck, Antilope cervicapra, Relocation plan from Bardaya to Chitwan has also raised red flags over habitat suitability. Overall, Nepal's rhino reintroduction can be considered successful, but continued habitat restoration and management will be essential to ensure these populations become fully self sustaining in the long term. Conservation success should not be measured only by population numbers, but also by the health and resilience of the habitats that support them. Okay. Okay. So in Bardia, locals are already witnessing the effects of habitat degradation on the rhinos. Manhu Martara, a wildlife guide with 8 years of experience, said that wallowing sites that once existed along riverbanks and grassland areas are now largely dry. This, she added, has forced rhinos to seek new habitats beyond the national park. Before, we used to spot 6 to 7 rhinos within the core park area, but these days we hardly sight one. Many rhinos were released in the Babai Valley, but it's difficult to spot them these days. I mean, greater one horned rhinos, even the elephants can be quite elusive within the area. So Mahatra said that many rhinos are now sighted in community forests in the fringes of the national park, with sporadic incidents of human wildlife conflict. I think there are also tigers in the area too, and also cheetah deer populations, even sambar deer, and I believe certain Indian crested porcupine. She said the rhinos usually enter farmlands and destroy crops during harvest season.
Well, they're
While
hungry.
yeah, that's pretty obvious. Well, in a rare incident, a nature guide was killed in a rhino attack in the Dala community forest 2 years ago, with new evidence suggesting habitat degradation in Babai, and that rhinos may still be exploring new suitable environments and searching for mates. Lamashani said the authorities should start prioritizing other areas that could be more conducive for the species. Said the Karnalai floodplain adjacent to Bardaya National Park could offer a better alternative for establishing a viable population of more than 50 rhinos, as well as Shaklapanta National Park and Koshi Tapu Wildlife Reserve,
Jesus, this is long.
which, yeah, currently are home to a small population of around 17 and 2 individuals, respectively. Yeah, it's very small for um, genetic variety. That's why you need these populations up. And it's unfortunate whenever one also that has the ability to reproduce perishes. Meanwhile, authors of the study say that translocation is not simply about. Okay, this is just being. Oh, hold on a second. Seemed repetitive. Some experts also argue that early rhino translocations in Bardaya, carried out before the armed conflict ended, were done hastily, with officials wanting quick results and not enough studies. Gosh, that is embarrassing. Or not. It's That's just horrible. In recent years, more studies and coordinated efforts by conservationists and government officials have improved understanding of rhino translocations and provided vital lessons for future relocations. Um, okay, so referring to the collared rhinos in Babai, he said that the adults were translocated from Chitwan and may still be searching for the grasslands and riverine habitats they previously inhabited. Um, okay, so it's just being repetitive after that. I mean, I guess it's not too surprising for India or Nepal in general. We have many instances with different animal relocations or animals in different types of like breeding programs where they're not being fed enough. What's another thing? Oh, yeah, and on several, I guess, die offs with animals that are relocated from one area to another. Maybe a little less so with tigers, but definitely seems to be the case with different species of herbivores. Or you have it where there are certain species like the nilgai antelope that are like a bit invasive in some instances, kind of like how they are in certain parts of Texas, where there are thousands of them. So, besides that, I'm not entirely sure how to depict this rhino situation. But besides that, we're going to. Uh,
I have one or two more.
Oh, hold on. We're gonna take a 2-minute break. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back.
What? Why would I move? That was weird. Oh,
Gizmodo.com. Pumas are helping make our roads safer.
got it. I just thought it sounds funny.
Okay, so pumas could be the crossing guard that humans never knew we wanted. Research out today shows how these hefty cats might be helping reduce car accidents involving deer. Biologists studied puma and deer populations living in the Pacific Northwest. I'm guessing this is somewhere over in Washington or Oregon State. Could be British Columbia. They found that areas that had a greater puma presence tend to have fewer deer vehicle collisions. The findings highlight some of the less obvious perks that come from humans coexisting with large predators. Let's see. So carnivores may well be providing a similar road safety service elsewhere around the globe where populations have persisted, and this valuable ecosystem service has just gone unnoticed to date. Lead author Justin Surasai, a wildlife ecologist and senior scientist with conservation scientists science partners, told Gizmo. Yeah, I guess this could be puma from further north. Pumas. Okay, this is just going over basic information. So Sirakai and his team were interested in understanding and quantifying the net value that communities living near pumas experience. And while people have often focused on the known risks, such as farmers losing livestock to the cats, we're much less certain about their potential benefits. This is a very typical response in almost all instances with
I thought it was going to be funnier.
many many scientists. Some research has suggested that reintroducing large predators like pumas and wolves to an area can reduce deer related car accidents. This study, however, looked at well established populations of pumas and deer living in the Olympic Peninsula of Washington. Okay, so I wasn't expecting specifically this area, but sounds right. Or it's expected. The team analyzed information from a large database of camera trap footage as well as data on car accidents involving wildlife in the region, and they found a consistent pattern. On the Olympic Peninsula of Washington, deer alter their use of both space and time where pumas are present, overlapping less with roads and reducing activity at night when some of the most dangerous collisions occur. The researchers estimated that high puma activity relative to low decreased the likelihood of a deer related car accident by 67%. Wow. And over a 5-year span, high puma activity could reduce the total number of these accidents by up to 76%. I wonder where specifically, though, this was occurring because the Olympic Peninsula is not a small area. Even Olympic National Park itself,
Where
it's
is it?
on the very west coast of Washington State, is south of Seattle, southwest.
That picture makes that puma look skinny.
Yeah, I
Is that
think
a
of
cub?
um he's an older cub if he is. Might be a she though. Looks a little more gracile in appearance. Their findings published Thursday in Current Biology also provide some insight into how exactly pumas are causing less car accidents. Much of the past work speculating how carnivores might reduce deer vehicle collisions was based on the assumption that carnivores need to kill enough deer to reduce vehicle collisions with deer. Whoa. This doesn't really make sense because pumas have little impact on the abundance of healthy deer populations. Study co author Mark Elbrook, director of the Puma program at Panthera, a nonprofit focusing on preserving wildcat populations, told Gizmodo. Importantly, our work reveals it's not by killing, it's by scaring prey that they make their biggest contribution to reductions in deer vehicle collisions. Well, it's probably due to the fact that they're eating them. In many ways, Elbrook added, pumas, okay, that's just being repetitive.
Okay, I'll do the last.
Okay, from discovermagazine.com, beavers once parachuted from planes in 1948 to relocate. Their legacy still shapes the Idaho wilderness today.
Parachuting beavers.
I might have, oh, maybe it was something else. So, learn how after World War II, a test beaver named Geronimo helped Idaho launch an airborne relocation that created valuable wetland habitat.
What made them think dropping a beaver from a plane with a parachute would even work?
Geronimo had just parachuted out of a plane. When handlers approached, the old male beaver did the last thing they might have expected, climbed back into the wooden box that had carried him. If Elmo Hedder's experiment worked, dozens more beavers would follow.
Did you say Elmo? Oh
Yeah.
my god, it is Elmo.
The unlikely test had a serious purpose as people built homes around McCall and Payette Lake. Beavers kept doing what beavers do. Their dams flooded property and disrupted orchards, culverts, and irrigation systems. Yet the Idaho Department of Fish and Game knew that the same handiwork could create valuable wetlands in the remote Chamberlain Basin. Rather than kill the animals, officials decided the beavers needed a new home. Getting them there was the hard part. Trucks stopped where the roads ended, leaving horses and mules to carry the box beavers into the
But
backcountry.
there's how many beavers in the US?
Well, these days, yeah, somewhere between 12 to 15 million. But back then, I don't know the approximate population. Let's see. Trucks stopped where the roads ended, leaving horses and mules to carry the box beavers into the backcountry. Some animals overheated or became so stressed that they refused to eat and died before release. Yeah, I was wondering if there was going to be a lot of issues with beavers doing this. His 1950 report, Transplanting Beavers by Airplane and Parachute, Published in the Journal of Wildlife Management, Header, an employee of the Idaho Department of Fish and Game, laid out his faster solution. He would carry the animals by air to wilderness streams in purpose built boxes suspended beneath surplus World War II parachutes. Oh, yeah, I think I saw this, but he just walked out of the box.
Well,
Headers. Yes, I think it was over in some part of Idaho, possibly.
yeah,
So did they just capture them from the lake and then
I don't understand if they dropped them and pulled them out, why didn't they just drive them over? I mean, why drop them? Put them in the back of a truck.
well, I was wondering, like, was this due to some study or
No, it's saying that they were trying to
were they just testing the parachutes and this had nothing to do with like a conservation
no, they were trying to redo the area, so
oh.
they dropped them in. So that's what it just said.
Yeah, they should have just driven them over. That sounds hmm,
Kind of
like maybe somebody was making money off of it. So Header's first idea was a woven willow carrier that the beavers could chew through after landing. The animals began gnawing immediately, raising the alarming prospect of loose beavers aboard the plane. And then they chew through the plane. So Header switched to a carrier with two wooden compartments connected at the base. Cords kept the container shut during its descent, but released it once the parachute reached the ground. Geronimo completed repeated test drops while Header refined the design and release height,
hold up, they
according to
dropped
BBC
one
Wildlife.
beaver over and over?
Yeah, it seems that way.
Poor beaver.
Once the system was ready, Geronimo joined three female beavers in the first group sent into the wilderness. On August 14th, 1948, beavers take to the air. A twin engine Beechcraft lifted off with a pilot, wildlife officer, and 8 crates of beavers.
Yeah, that's a small plane, I think.
Once the over the following days, crews sent 76 beavers drifting down toward backcountry meadows. 75 reached the ground alive. Only one died after working its way partly out of a container and falling near the end of the descent. The others came out from their carriers and began exploring their new surroundings.
Oh, God.
Wow. Yeah. Quite tragic. How parachuted beavers improved Idaho's wilderness. New dams appeared as colonies formed around the release areas, marking the operation as an ecological success, according to BBC Wildlife. Idaho Fish and Game Steve Liebenthal later told Boise State's public radio that the beavers created valuable habitat in what is now a vast protected wilderness. He believed their descendants were still there, reshaping its waterways. Let's see. So elsewhere, it's just being repetitive about the dams. Elsewhere in Idaho, Bow Creek offers a modern example of what beavers can do, according to BBC Wildlife. It's an odd source, but okay. When wildfires swept through the area in 2018, vegetation, besides stretches with more beaver activity, remained mostly green. Satellite views later revealed wider corridors of plant growth where dams retain water. Bow Creek is separate from the Chamberlain Basin release site, but shows how beaver engineering can help a landscape long after the animals arrive. Okay, so beavers now live across Idaho's major river systems, and their numbers remain stable, according to an Idaho Statesman retrospective. The parachutes are long gone, but wildlife managers still trap and relocate problem beavers when needed.
Yeah, they don't throw them out of planes anymore.
Um, So near people, the beavers' dams had made them a nuisance. In the Chamberlain Basin, the same dam building instincts held water, formed wetlands, and gave other wildlife places to live. I think that's it. Okay. Well, we're going to give everyone a minute to stick any comments into the chat. Thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. We're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And happy Akainocephalus Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.